In today's episode, you're gonna learn what is Section 8, is it a scam or is it legit? What are the pros and what are the cons, and what to do with the cons that you have, and how you can manage this business, and how you can rent this to Section 8 successfully without too many headaches. Today, we're gonna dive deep about this program because I feel like there's so many gurus out there, especially like kids. These are like 20, 23 years old that I see on Facebook. Yes, I'm buying this house in Ohio for $10,000 and putting $10,000 into it and renting it for $900. But like, the thing is that you got to be careful to what you listen to because there's a lot of things. But before that, I want you to follow the fair housing rules because, again, these are really important. You cannot discriminate a tenant because they have a Section 8 voucher. But before we dive into Section 8, what is a Section 8? Section 8 is just a program that is subsidized by the government. Basically, the government pays a majority of the rent, and then the tenant pays typically 30 to 40% of their income, whatever income they're getting. So I have a lot of tenants. I have about 30 to 35 tenants. They're Section 8. And basically, they pay anywhere from $100 to $200, $300, and some tenants don't pay any. So one of the pros is stable income. Basically, you can count that you're going to get the check from the government every single month, pretty much at the same time. If you can either do direct deposit or the check can go straight to your house, and basically you're going to get your check. Now, the portion of a tenant is what is tricky. Typically, they pay before the 10th, in my experience. Why? Because sometimes it's $50, $100, $200, and that's an amount that they can afford. So one of the pros, again, is stable income. Now, one of the cons, and this is probably the one that I hate the most, is inspection every year. So every year they have to inspect. They send some inspectors, and basically you have to go through an inspection. I don't think it's as rough, but I don't think it's easy. What do they look like? They look like, all the smoke detectors and carbon monoxide have to be in there. Now they are asking you to have a sealed battery, 10-year sealed battery, which they're a little bit more expensive than the regular ones, but not much. And I think this is smart. And the reason why is because you can buy it on Amazon. You don't have to worry about these batteries for 10 years, hopefully, because that's what they meant for. And then as long as you put it there, you're going to pass inspections. You're supposed to be passing inspection every year. Now, they also check, what is the condition of the bathroom? What is the condition of all the knobs? If there's anything loose, if there's anything cracked, anything that's not working, things like that. So as long as you're a decent landlord, I don't think you're going to have a problem with this. The problem with this is, schedule this inspection. If you don't pass, let's say that you don't pass, they will hold your check until you pass, until it's satisfactory to them. And I had good to decent experience with these inspectors, so I have no problem. I have maybe like one or two times that I didn't pass, and I think it was because of the knob. They didn't want to have any locks in the bedroom, like extra locks, so I had to remove them, something like that. But for the most part, I don't think they're tough. If you're dealing with building inspections, like for the town, if you're flipping a house, it's way easier than that. So I will say that's one of the annoying things about Section 8. Again, one of the pros is that the tenant comes out of pocket a little bit. And I think this is an advantage because it's not much. It's not like your rent is $1,500 and they have to come with $1,500. They have to come with $100. And that's something, again, that they can afford for the most part. So I haven't had one Section 8 tenant that don't want to pay their portion of the rent until now. Let me knock on wood, right? One of the cons here is they destroy your place. And I'm going to tell you one story that just happened to me. So we have a Section 8 tenant. She was an older lady. She was unfortunately a little bit mentally ill, which I have so much passion for. But then she had 2 dogs. She had 3 to 4 kids. And she was living in a 3-bedroom apartment here in West Haven, paying $1,800. What if you could retire in less than 10 years? Not someday, but actually 10 years. I wrote the exact roadmaps in my book, Born to Retire Young. And these are real estate strategies that I personally use to go from coming to this country with $500 to a 60-unit real estate portfolio. And every single penny goes to building schools in the Dominican Republic. So grab your copy today. Link is in the show notes. Now back to the episode. The Section 8 was covering the whole rent. She trashed the place. I'm going to try to put a video here so you guys can see. Also, her lease is supposed to end January 31st this year. Today we're in July. And she kept pushing it. Hey, give me one more month. Give me one. We extended for like 4 months because, again, we're letting her trying to find an apartment. And then this is how she left the apartment. Completely trashed. She has no security deposit because when I bought the house, she didn't have any security deposit. So one of the things that you can do here is, let's say that you buy in the building and the tenant has a lease already. Next year on the renewal, you have to ask them to have at least 1 month of security deposit. And that way you protect yourself for this. Again, $1,800. I spent 10 grand renovating this apartment. It took 2 weeks. Because the smell and the condition was not great. Great property, but it was not in great condition. So I spent 10 grand. $1,800 would have helped a little bit. But again, you have to have reserves. And it all comes down to this lady had no education. And education doesn't have to do anything with status, like socioeconomic status. Because you can be rich and have no education, and you can be poor and not have any education. So it doesn't have to be with any socioeconomic. In fact, I have like 5 Section 8. They are the most educated tenants that I have. And they are obviously, going through financially struggle, but they are very educated. So one of the cons here, typically low income are not as educated as high income, unfortunately. That's a reality, and this is something that I'm living right now. So that doesn't mean that Section 8 is bad or is good. It's just, it is what it is. One of the pros is that the tenant don't want to lose their voucher. The voucher is basically saying how much rent that they can afford. So like Section 8 program tells them, hey, you can afford up to this amount. And for the most part, they don't want to lose that voucher. They don't want to play around that voucher because, again, that pays their rent. They obey the rules for the most part. Not everybody, but for the most part, they obey the rules. So I think that's one of the pros. One of the cons here is the paperwork. So the paperwork involved here is, inspections, you have a little bit of paperwork. All the renewals, you have to, the caseworker, which is typically the person that helps her to find an apartment and manage. It's like their manager, right? The casework, it sends you some paperwork. You have to fill it up. You have to sign it, then sign it to the tenant, then give it back to the caseworker. And for the most part, it's not as hard because everything is done through email, at least in my experience. So that's not too hard, but it's one of the cons. One of the pros here that I see is less vacancy. And I'm going to explain this. People that cannot afford rent and they have some, extra residual income can either get a bigger apartment, better apartment, or buy a property. Section 8 tenants, for the most part, don't move that much because, unfortunately, they cannot afford to move. They cannot afford maybe to have a bigger apartment, or they cannot afford to buy a house in this case, obviously. So the vacancy is less. They tend to last longer in the apartment. One of the cons here is that you don't set the price. There's a standard price for your town that sets a 2-bedroom is renting for this range. 3-bedroom is renting for this range. And again, the range it's like, let's say a 2-bedroom is $1,500 to $1,600. It's typically $100. So you cannot say, hey, for this 2-bedroom, I can rent it to $2,000. You can say that because every town has their own standard rate. So you have to go through that. And I think that's one of the cons because you can have a beautiful apartment in a beautiful neighborhood, but they limit how much you can make. So I think that's one of the cons. One of the pros here is that there's a bigger pool of Section 8. So I don't think you can ever run out of Section 8 tenants. And If you have, please let me know, comment or whatever. You can call an agency, a Section 8 agency, and they tell you, hey, we have a long list of tenants. And then you can obviously vet them with the house regulations and all that. But basically, you have a bigger pool than regular tenants because there's a long list, people waiting for housing to be available for them to move. Section 8 tenants like voucher, they're ready to move. One of the cons here, and this is something that a lot of people don't know, but Congress hasn't passed a law where it creates more funding for Section 8. So in April 2026, this year, Congress didn't pass, more funding. And for Section 8 landlords, that could be an issue because if the government says we're not going to pay more or we're going to cut, and then you have a tenant that cannot pay their rent, you can tell them, hey, you got to move. But what if they don't want to move? Then you have to evict, and that is a risk. So I consider this a con because you never know what could happen. And you should definitely follow, again, all the guidelines, but also check what's happened with the government. Because if there's no funding, there's no rental, potential evictions, and that could cause big issues in your portfolio. Hey, real quick, I want to give you something for free. This is the same flipping calculator that I use to analyze every single deal in less than 60 seconds. No more guessing, no more spreadsheet headaches, just plug in the numbers and know instantly if the deal is worth it. The link is in the show notes. Now, back to the episode. One of the pros that I really like is that Section 8 typically have better rents than actually the market. Sometimes I've seen scenarios like, especially when you have like 4 to 5 bedrooms, I see scenarios where Section 8 has, let's say, 4-bedroom apartments set at $2,200, but the market rent is $1,800. That is definitely possible. Again, this happens for the most part where there's more bedrooms. One of the cons here is the inspection can delay the move-in. So basically, every time that you put an apartment and there's a Section 8 tenant moving in, there has to be an inspection before the tenant moves in. And this can delay the process of renting, and this could be a little bit annoying. So it is what it is. I will never recommend have any tenant, whether Section 8 or not, move in without a security deposit. I don't know. I don't care how bad your apartment is. Like, this is your security that if they trash the place, you have something. So don't try to be a good landlord. The lady that I told you about, we treat her well. We tell her she has to move because she was having troubles with all the tenants in the building. And after 4 months that we let her stay, she trashed our place. Now, that doesn't mean that all Section 8 tenants are bad. I have Section 8 tenants that are really clean. They pay their portion on time. They respect my team and myself. So, is Section 8 is a scam or is it legit? I'm going to leave it up to you. You decide. Let me know in the comments if you like this podcast or not. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace. You think this business is easy, but look how the tenant with no security deposit left the apartment. So that's what we have